Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's West Shore Photography Club meeting. It is the last day of February, the 28th, 2022. I would like to thank the folks who provided the constructive comments regarding my program from last week. What do you see? It's helped. I'm revised it considerably. I want to, thank Joe and Mark Albano, especially for comments he made. And I've got it ready to present to the Redlands, California Club in April. So thanks for your comments. And now I can't help it. Everywhere I go, I'm seeing symbols of Gestalt principles. I went to the bank today to Members First, and their emblem they have, the M. Oh, it's not complete. It's cut off. And then there's a 1 over here. It's only a partial M, but everybody sees the complete M because of the continuity principle. All right. I'd like to remind everyone about the print exhibit Friday night. It's this Friday night, March 4th, from 6 to 7:30. I highly encourage everyone to be there, whether you have a print in the exhibit or not. Please be supportive of the folks of the club and of the West Shore Historical Society, of the Mechanicsburg Arts Center, and show up. We have some presentations to make, and I think Joe can elaborate on that in a minute. But we're going to start those about 6:30. Now, you don't have to come at 6:30, but that's when we're going to do the presentation. So it would be great if you could be there at that time. We have 49 prints from 20 different club members. And Joe, well, we've all been impressed. And Bill Kleiber has the images hung already, the prints. And Bill's a retired art teacher and photography teacher from Mechanicsburg High School. He used to do the black and white darkroom stuff. And he told me he was quite impressed with the images and also impressed with their presentation. So it looks like we did a good job with the matting and framing. So thank you. And Joe and Mike helped with that, of course, with the presentation they did a couple of weeks ago to get everybody ready. I know I took notes and picked up a few pointers. Joe, what sort of presentations are we going to have Monday night? Friday night.
We're going to have for the 3 owners, the Bayshore House, the Bittner, the farm, Bayshore Farm, the Bittner House, and for the barn that we photographed. We're going to be the members that took those images are going to be presenting those a frame print for the owners to take home, and that's what we're going to have. It'll be a short, very short presentation. No speeches, just to say thank you from the club to them for letting us gather on their property.
Very good. And we'll have some light refreshments available for you. So please put that on your calendar. Hope to see you this Friday night at the Mechanicsburg Arts Center, okay, on 641, about 3 miles west of Mechanicsburg. It's the big old barn back to the little lane there. Yeah. Okay. Next week, March the 7th. Yes, tomorrow's March 1st. So next Monday is March the 7th. Because of the schedule rearrangement, we have an image review, okay, next Monday night, and we have a theme. The theme is fog, and our very own Mike Donovan, who's now Kelly's hero, always has been, will do the image review for us. So I'll put this out as a reminder in the follow-up email tomorrow morning, Mark will take care of opening the website so you can upload your images. So please enter. I know when we have themes, a lot of times we don't get as many people entering images, but please either go out and shoot something quickly or look through your reserves, or you've done that the last couple of weeks, and consider uploading an image to the website for the image review, next Monday night. Okay, Joe, let me turn it over to you for some other upcoming events.
Okay, for our trip updates, we were at the state capitol this week. Mike, can you give us an idea of what that was about?
Yeah, we had about probably 30 photographers on hand. And so the turnout was really great. We got to travel into the Supreme Court room, into the House of Representatives and the Senate, and all kinds of nooks and crannies that normally you don't get to go to. So that was very nice. Of course, the rotunda, and lots of things to photograph for sure. And I saw that many people put on Facebook many of their images, and they were just tremendous, absolutely beautiful. And it was a little bit of a difficult lighting situation, as you can well imagine in there, but everybody conquered it with ease.
Mhm. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. We have a trip coming up this coming Saturday on, not this coming Saturday, but on March 12th. And the City of Harrisburg Photo Walk. Eve and Mary Fox are going to be doing that. Eve, are you on board tonight here?
I am, yes.
Okay, can you tell us about that?
Sure. It's going to be a casual walk. It's usually a really good trip. I am so sorry. My cat will not let me alone right now. It's usually a really good walk, very easy, flat. You can leave at your leisure, go back, do whatever you want after. Sometimes we get something to eat afterwards, but we'll walk streets, alleys, look for some geometric shapes, shadows. It's always an adventure. It's different every time we go. So it's usually a very good, I'm so sorry that this cat, it's usually a very good trip. Thanks.
I think you told me, Eve, that was a good place to practice street photography too on some of the busy
Yes.
streets. Huh?
Yeah. And we'll walk up to the train station, the bus station, train station, and that's always never disappoints up there.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Eve. The trips committee is going to be getting together in the next few weeks. So if you have any suggestions for trips we might take, please just email us and we'll give that consideration. We have quite a few lined up already, but we need some more ideas. So that is all I have, Dennis, on the trips.
Very good. Would you like to introduce our guest speaker for this evening?
Do that. We have this evening, we have Betsy Wilson, and Betsy's in the green blazer, I guess that is, I don't know, on the screen. And welcome, Betsy. We're really looking forward to you tonight. And your theme tonight is not about, what was the title? I forgot. It's Beyond Fruit Bowls and Flowers. And I was fortunate enough to get a preview of it. And trust me, it is really interesting kind of stuff that she does. Very creative. Plus, she's also going to give us some pointers and tips on how to actually do this. Betsy was awarded the Photographer of the Year at the Chester County Camera Club. That's a pretty prestigious group down there. And also, she won the first place in the Philadelphia Flower Show for photography. That was quite an accomplishment. And the silver medal awarded on the Wilmington International Expedition of Photography. And Betsy's on tonight, and I believe her husband Jim is on too, monitoring what we're doing. So Betsy, without any more ado, I'd like to bring on the program that you have for us, and we're going to conduct it this way tonight. We're going to do, first of all, the session will be recorded, and you're going to get a condensed version of her slides that she has tonight. We're going to be muting everybody, and we're going to ask for about the first 30 minutes for her presentation. She will then take a break, and then we'll pose those questions, some of them, to Betsy. Then she'll do another 30 minutes approximately, and then at the end of that, Betsy will then entertain live, where we unmute everybody, live questions for you. So that's the program we're going to have. We don't want to break in with questions as she's going along, because that, from a presenting standpoint, that really breaks your train of thought. So, Betsy, we are ready.
Excellent. Okay. Now, why isn't that coming up? We just did this.
Yeah, if you do that again, try it again with this. Resume the slideshow, maybe there. I saw.
Where is resume?
Well, go from the beginning on the left there. There you go. And then it says resume slideshow.
Oh, right there. There we go. Thank you. It's always something. Well, first off, thank you, Joe, for inviting me. And as Joe said, both My husband Jim and I were very active members of the Chester County Camera Club. And boy, we have learned so much from camera clubs. So I hope you all learned something from me tonight. And as Joe said, I'll take a pause about halfway through for questions. But Joe or Dennis, if anything is starting to, the video doesn't look good, or I'm not on the right slide or something like that, just please feel free to interrupt, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Well, first, I want to introduce you to a member of our Chester County Camera Club. This is Anita. She's a very talented photographer, and she's in charge of programs at our camera club. And I think all camera clubs have an Anita, a really sweet, gentle, unintimidating person by appearance. Doesn't she look like a sweet grandmother? But you don't mess with Anita. And when Anita asks you to do something, you dare not say no to her. And she asked me to do a presentation on still lifes. Well, the year before, Anita had asked me to do a presentation on motion photography. And boy, motion was a lot of fun. I talked about freezing actions, such as this blue heron in flight, using a very fast shutter speed, or using a slow shutter speed to record movement of headlights and taillights. A motion technique called panning to both freeze motion and blur it in the same frame. Just some really cool stuff. Another technique for motion. So motion is exciting. It's dynamic. It's fun. So why did Anita ask me to create a presentation on still lifes? Still lifes don't move. They're about motionless things, dead things. Well, I had experimented somewhat with still lifes, and I suspect that is the reason Anita asked me to talk about this subject. And I remember she commented on this image that I took on a club outing. Maybe she thought I had a talent for photographing dried up leaves and dead spiders. Or maybe she knew that I have a habit of collecting discarded nests, empty robin's eggs when I go for woodland walks. Or that I like to photograph broken things, whatever. But a whole presentation on still lifes? How can I fill an hour with images of fruit baskets? And I knew this would be a tough challenge. Thanks, Anita. And I must admit, I wasn't even exactly sure what qualified as a still life. So first stop on my journey, Wikipedia. So a work of art of mostly inanimate subjects that are natural, such as food or flowers, or man-made, such as books or vases, other things. And over the course of my research, I photographed all of these things. So the term still life is derived from the Dutch word still even, and other countries use terms that mean dead nature. So before I know it, I'm at the library taking out books and researching the beginnings and the history of still life. A lot more time than I anticipated, thanks, Anita. But I must admit, it was really pretty interesting. So here is a very early still life. And still lifes like this were found in ancient burial sites, and they depicted scenes of everyday life. Well, everyday life, I didn't know they had snow cones way back then. And it was 3,000 years later, in the 16th century, that the still life gained recognition as an accepted art form. Caravaggio used strong contrasts between light and dark, known as chiaroscuro. And now I am loving the sculptural look, and I start to look more and still life paintings. Let's fast forward to the 19th century. Cézanne is considered the greatest master of still life painting. This work is his most celebrated. I mean, just look at the exquisite composition, sort of the movement and the color. So this painting is the most expensive still life ever sold at auction. It went for $60.5 million. Van Gogh's sunflowers, perhaps the most famous still life of all. I grow sunflowers in my garden. You think I can create something like this? Studies in composition and lighting. So now I start to research different types of still lifes. There is found still life or created still life. And the subject matter can be either natural or man-made. So natural still lifes have really been a favorite of mine. I just never really thought of them as still lifes, because photographing nature, it's opened my eyes to see the beauty all around us. I now notice texture and shape, color and patterns, and it's everywhere, like this close-up of a cactus. So when you're walking down your favorite mountain trail and run across fallen leaves in a nice pattern, that's a found still life. If you photograph it as is, it's a found still life. And I like to just sit in the grass on a misty morning and just wait, and the beauty will appear. You will find your natural still life. And sometimes I don't go find items, they come find me. You know, most guests bring a bottle of wine. My friends bring me dead things like this hornet's nest. Man-made found still. So what treasures we can find by walking around and observing, such as in this store window. I'm sure when you do downtown Harrisburg, you can find a lot of gems like this. A still life can be anything. A rusty lock on a crypt. And collections of old stuff create interesting modular compositions. Museums are fascinating life subjects. I'm sure many of you have probably been to the Martin Guitar Factory in Nazareth. Gloves and a wrench, gears and rusty pipes. These were taken at an abandoned silk mill, and again are examples of found still lifes. Created still lifes are a great way to learn about color, light, composition, all in a controlled environment. And this is what we all picture when one says the word still life. So then I start to read about the disciplines involved with still lifes. With created still lifes, the photographer makes the picture rather than takes them. So unlike landscape photography or street photography, where maybe you're waiting for a beautiful sunset or waiting for an interesting down the street, still lifes, you, the photographer, are now in complete control. Perhaps you want to tell a story. We found these glasses and this British passport that belonged to Jim's grandfather in a leather briefcase in the attic. And by the way, I saw a great example of a created still life website by Liz Brown. It was called Huga. And she creatively placed a book, a coffee cup, a blanket, and a candle in the snow. So of course I had to look up the meaning. It's a Danish concept that encompasses the feeling of quiet comfort. So thank you, Liz, if you're on, for teaching me something new. And then there's something in between found and created still lifes. So maybe you stumble upon a scene of interest, but you add a little creativity of your own. So this is in that abandoned silk mill. It's a cold November day. The snow was flying in these broken windows. The broken glass and the leaves were there, but I moved them around a little bit. I wanted to this little curve going here to create the composition that I liked. These rows of machinery on this old wooden floor were really quite photogenic. They had leading lines, repetition, but I added the shoes in the foreground to convey a sense of the people who work every day. And beautiful light came in this old window. I positioned the chair, an old umbrella, create a personality in a scene with nobody in it. And we saw this one already. This was taken at the barn at the Kerner Farm in Chadds Ford. That's in Chester County. And you're probably familiar with the artist Andrew Wyeth. Kerner Farm is one of the locations he used for many of his paintings. And I think one of the amazing things we can learn from Wyeth is that art subjects can be found anywhere. You don't need to travel. He created thousands of paintings and drawings just within a few mile radius of his home in Chadds Ford. While at the place where he created so many amazing paintings, I decided to look for beauty in the ordinary. This is Anna Kerner's trunk in an upstairs bedroom. And I love the patterns inside the trunk, on the linoleum floor, the wallpaper, even the glue on the wall where the wallpaper peeled off. An old truck door in the barn. And Andrew Wyeth found beauty in simplicity, which inspires me to create simple still lifes. So I like the beautiful soft light on this apple, and I placed it. It's on a white painted mantle at the Kerner farmhouse. And continuing in the spirit of Andrew Wyeth, my husband Jim and I, we managed to get into the cupola of a historic home in Chadds Ford, where Wyeth created many more of his paintings. And we brought the skeleton. And you can actually see paint splatters on the floor from Andrew Wyeth. But this is the reason we brought the skeleton, to try to create a similar image of this painting by Wyeth called Dr. Sin. So here's my attempt. So, not exactly the same, but we had a lot of fun experimenting. Close up, a great way to create stunning still lifes, and it works very well with natural subjects. And I had to become more enamored with traditional still life subjects and fruit. Fruit, endless possibilities. And as I studied more and more examples, the more I became excited about the beauty of simple composition, shape, color, and light. Here's a simple apple, but two very different still lifes. So for a while, I was on a fruit and vegetable kick. Partially peeled tangerine, cherries in natural light. And I like to sometimes spray the subject with a little spray bottle just to add some interest. This is on black plexiglass. That's how I created that reflection. Close-up of strawberries. The simplicity of radishes in a watering can. And a very colorful composition. And you can see again that I spritzed it with the water. And I love pumpkins. And we found this old grinder at a flea market, and this old piece of weathered wood it's sitting on, we bought at a junk shop. You're going to see this weathered wood in a few more images. But nature provides such variety of shape and patterns and wonder. And in the environment of still life, we can control the placement of objects, the background, and the lighting. We are in control of everything, which can be a blessing and a curse. So these were taken at a flower photography workshop where I learned how to position flowers and make them stay in place. And I started studying still lifes, both paintings and photographs, so I could practice composition and lighting. And after seeing many beautiful paintings of simple still life subjects online, I was inspired just to create a simple composition of onions and burlap. So this is just with natural light. And I thought, yeah, I will try to compose my own bouquet of sunflowers in the style of Van Gogh. So here's my version on the right. I found this 5-sided vase my daughter made in middle school ceramics class. I filled it with sunflowers from my garden. I put them on a yellow tablecloth. I added a painterly texture in post-processing. So what did I learn? Well, I learned not to do that again. Who knew that the vase my daughter made in middle school ceramics class didn't have a glaze on the bottom? The water soaked through, and I now have a pentagonal stain as a permanent reminder of my still life project. Thanks, Anita. So a few thoughts on composition. I'm going to touch on shape and color, placement of objects, odd numbers. Angle of view is so important, and something called flat lay style. So shape and color. Practicing still life photography makes you really think about composition, including the arrangement of objects and colors and the path followed by the movement of the viewer's eye. So most of you are probably aware that red is very attractive. Your eye tends to go to red. So I intentionally split up the red in this image, so your eye would kind of bounce back and forth. And then I placed the positioning of these stems. What I'm trying to do here is create movement. So your eye kind of comes down around this stem, maybe up around here, maybe down around this leaf, up and back in again. So I'm intentionally trying to guide the movement of the viewer's eye. And I love diagonal lines. I use diagonals in a lot of my imagery. So this one has a very muted color palette, composition full of lines and angles. This was taken at Ellis Island in New York, which is a really fascinating place to photograph if you get the opportunity. Negative space tends to create a calmer mood in your still life images. And while it can be fun to embellish your still life compositions with lots of interesting elements, remember that less is often more. And here you can see how this subject falls into that traditional rule of thirds. And still lifes can be simple, but even a lone subject will benefit with good composition. You will often see triangular shapes in still lifes. This one's a bit more complex, but it still has a triangular composition. And angle of view is important. So on this one, I'm adjusting my camera on the tripod just up and down slightly because I wanted to get definition on the inside of this picture. So I wanted to be able to see the front of this picture and the back rim, and same here with this sugar bowl. And I don't know if anyone has really figured out why odd numbers are more pleasing. I have read that it suggests a visual balance. You know, to me, it seems more of an unbalance, but I agree it works. 3s and 5s seem to work best, but it can be more. And, okay, so I think I'm done surfing Google Images and Pinterest boards when I stumble upon something called flat lay composition. Well, I'm not done. Now I'm intrigued and I need to see more. There goes another 2 hours, thanks to Anita. So basically you put the lens of your camera parallel to your subject and shoot straight down for a more contemporary look. It does help if you have a tripod with the arm that comes out and you can attach your camera facing straight down. So when I began my photographic journey about 10 years ago, I really knew nothing about photography. And I stumbled on some images by a macro photographer named Mike Moats. I'm sure some of you have seen his work and know of him. But I was just blown away by his images. I was memorized by them. And I found out that Mike Moats would be giving a workshop nearby. I signed up. So these are images of mine taken at that workshop. And he shared all the basics needed to get a good image. And he brought all sorts of fun stuff to photograph. But that workshop had a huge impact. And I left energized and motivated to really delve into photography. I left with a newfound passion. And one of the things that Mike taught us was to shoot straight down on your subject. It not only creates a pleasing composition, but it does help with getting everything in focus when it's the same level to your camera lens. But, you know, I don't recall Mike Mo calling this flat lay. I heard of it. But moving on to some more recent images, flat lay photography is really an easy way to showcase items you own. It's simple to do, can be shot almost anywhere, can be as simple as arranging the items on your desk. For this one, I searched in the back of a closet. I pulled out old boxes of silver, once used by my grandmothers. Odd numbers, 9. And when I placed these food items on the spoons, a few of these things spilled out and I just left them there. I thought they added some visual interest. Now, all of these images were taken by me, but some were totally inspired by images I found online. When I saw something I liked, I tried my best to create something similar so I could learn. You know, it never would have occurred to me to photograph silverware in the bottom of the sink, but I tried it and I like it. So I created all these setups. I pulled food out of the fridge, utensils out of every drawer. I had stuff all over the kitchen. Jim went to make dinner. He couldn't find any utensils to cook with. We ran out of forks and spoons before dinner. And so I thought my research would end with some great examples of beautiful bowls filled with pears and grapes, maybe a skull or two. But that was just the beginning. My quest to learn more went way beyond skimming a few library books, and I wound up filling many mornings and many cups of coffee as I began to realize how diverse still lifes could be. So the laundry didn't get done, thanks to Anita. So now I'm on some sort of a silverware kick. I'm photographing forks in all different positions. Here, the shadows just remind me of sort of the long curved necks of herons. Another one inspired by an image I found online. And this is just a simple setup, piece of black plexiglass to create that reflection. But I learned that it's not easy balancing an egg on forks and that it makes quite a mess when it rolls off and breaks. So I learned another tip online. You see this little tiny notch right at the top of this egg? Well, if you take a pin and make a little hole in the top and a little hole in the bottom of the egg, you can blow the yolk out. And an empty egg is much easier to balance. And it doesn't make as big a mess when it falls. And sometimes, I swear, sometimes magic just happens. I was just playing around with different groupings and positions of silverware. This is just window light, and the light reflected off these forks, and it was like a heavenly chorus started singing. Now the shadows are subdued, and it is more about this angelic glow. Isn't that beautiful? Kitchen forks become menacing monsters with the right light angle. So look at how this changes from sort of a soft angel-like form on the left to a devil's pitchfork on the right. I look at this and I feel like angel on the left shoulder, devil on the right, good conscience, bad conscience. Should I have a cup of herbal tea or another glass of wine? Well, right shoulder won. So now I'm photographing wine and wine glasses. In this one, I'm playing with the shadows cast by the wine bottles. And this is another example of flat light composition as I'm actually shooting down on the tops of those wine bottles. A found still life, wine glasses in a restaurant. Created still lifes. I set these up at home and experimented with the arrangements, the lighting, and the angle. And experimented with some dramatic lighting to highlight those beautiful curves. So Jim is my lighting expert. I have yet to conquer flash photography. He set up the lighting for me on this. A created still life. I started playing with reflections and refractions. And by changing the camera angle just ever so slightly, the shape of those refracted polka dots would change. Just an ordinary glass in front of striped paper. I Googled stripes and printed it. Now, we've been in the same house for 30 plus years, and I'm amazed at the amount of stuff that we have accumulated. Probably some of you can relate to this. So we had these old dishes, not even enough of a set to take to Goodwill, so I was just going to throw them out. And Jim said, why don't you photograph them first? So I did. And then he said, if they're just going in the trash, why don't you break them and photograph them? So of course I did. I challenged myself to try to create an interesting composition and lighting. So anything can be your subject, even broken dishes. So maybe I got a little carried away. And as I went deeper and deeper into the Google still life wormhole, I came across the technique of scanning. This is already a favorite technique of mine, and I've done quite a bit of it. Sometimes it's called a scanography. The camera is a flatbed scanner. This is just an ordinary scanner we bought to scan documents. I think it cost about 110 bucks. And here's how it works. This image shows tomatoes and onions and how I place them. I want you to look at, here's a big red onion on the left, bottom left and top right. Here's the resulting scan from that image. So notice now the big onion is bottom right and top left. Everything is not only upside down, but it's backwards. And this is another example of flat lay composition, although it was basically shot upside down. It's being shot from underneath. It's being scanned from underneath. And this is cropped in tighter. Just wanted to show you that you can achieve incredible detail with this. And a few more scans. This is Queen Anne's lace positioned in a gradle dance. It's again a triangular composition. And these seed pods have these beautiful colors. We used to call these helicopters when I was a kid because you could pull this off and throw it in the air and it just kind of whirligig down. Autumn leaves work very well. You know, there's just so many choices of shape and size and color. And I enjoy just trying different groupings and patterns of leaves. And here's a cropped in portion of a scan of another colorful autumn leaf. I just really want to show you the amazing detail. And this actually makes me think that I'm in an airplane and I'm flying over highways and roads and housing developments. And oh, look, there's Target. There's Wawa. Hellebore flowers, odd numbers. These will be growing soon. Spring flowers from my garden, more hellebore flowers, and I love Jack in the Pulpits. A tapestry of flowers and vegetables. Now, it's tricky and time consuming to create a composition like this, as again, everything is upside down and backwards. And it may take me 20 attempts at repositioning to get an image I like, because here's what'll happen. I'll put everything down on top of the scanner and take that first scan, and lo and behold, there's a little piece of stem or leaf underneath this flower that I didn't notice. Well, the only way to fix that is I have to pick up the tomato, pick up the Queen Anne's lace, pick up the broccoli, pick up the zinnia to get to the sunflower, remove that little piece of stem, and try to gingerly put everything back down again. So to do a complex still life like this, you really need some patience. Here's a pattern of pansies. Not quite perfect. As you can see, one pansy petal was bent, but I think it's okay. I think it adds a little bit of character. So this is what an arrangement looks like as it's placed on the scanner. Looks like quite a mess, doesn't it? Here is the scan from that mess. So I want to show you, here's a mayapple flower, big mayapple flower, little mayapple flower. Here it is, big mayapple flower, little mayapple flower. I've covered it with this sprig of azalea. Here's that sprig of azalea. So hopefully you kind of get the idea of what's going on here. And I'll take you through my process. First, I'll gather all sorts of items from my yard, and that Windex is there as you need to constantly clean the scanner glass. And then I place the items onto what I think may be an interesting arrangement. And you can actually see on the monitor that I've scanned just some parts of flowers that I may use later. So this was my first attempt, and I hated it. I felt the colors just didn't work, especially those colors with those helicopter seeds in the bottom. They were pretty colors, but those colors just didn't play well with the other colors. So I just scraped everything off the scanner and started over. And I decided to stick with blues and purples and greens. And I like these colors much better. So I think this composition looks maybe a little bit squashed. I just want to elongate it a bit. Okay, now I'm liking this better. And a few minor changes that I did in Photoshop. Remember, I had scanned those pieces. Let me just go back and forth a couple times. I just added a couple little pieces back in there. And then I just tied the whole thing together with a border. And you can simulate the magic of milkweed seed pods floating away. You know, I don't know how you could get a shot like this in nature without background clutter, and to place those floating seeds right where you want them. A couple more of milkweed, which I actually find very difficult to photograph, but it can be quite delicate and graceful. So, but do you have any idea what a mess milkweed seeds make? I'm still finding these fuzzies floating around my house. Thanks, Anita. So I'll take a pause here and see if there are any questions. We're about halfway through. So Joe or Dennis, Let me know if there are any questions.
Betsy, we had one question, but we actually have to make a correction from what we said earlier on our schedule for next week and the following.
Sure.
And the next week is not going to be an image review. It's going to be Mark Urbano is going to do a before and after program, one of our most requested programs. Mark, would you want to give the folks a little bit of an idea of what was going to happen?
Sure. I mean, a lot of you people have done this before, but basically,
Mark, can you increase your volume?
you can't hear me.
Very lightly.
I don't know if I can get the volume up any higher.
Okay. Go ahead.
Give it a try. Hold on.
There you go.
Yeah, just speak a little louder.
Okay. Okay. Many of you people have done this before. This is where we as club members get to participate and share our pictures in a little different way. We show the original image and then we show the image after it's processed and talk about how we moved from the original image to the processed image. So for this, what we need is 2 images, a before and an after. You need to submit them to me, and there'll be a message going out tomorrow, Joe, probably, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes.
With all the contact information. I'll display the images, and you'll explain them, and then we go through them on a first come first served basis. The people who submit first are the ones who get done the earliest, I guess, is the best way. I like this program. This is the second time that I've hosted it, and I really enjoy it because I get to learn a lot and see how people process things. So that's it, Joe. Oh,
Okay.
and sorry, just like Dennis said earlier about the fog images, get images in. Last time we had about 12 images, I think, and we probably had space for a couple more if we'd had them available.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. And I apologize, folks, for that mistake. And that'll be coming to you tomorrow morning. And Betsy, we do have one question. And that is, how do you control the light from the Scanology images?
It's really pretty amazing. You see, they all have this very dark black background. I do this in a room in daylight with lights on in the room. And the lid of the scanner is open, okay? Kind of messes with your head, doesn't it? I don't have a bright light shining right down on the scanner. I avoid that. Like if you have an overhead light or something like that, that might not work, but it's because the light is so close to your subject, okay? So think of a scanner. That light is traveling in a band right below the glass, which is just a fraction of an inch away from your object laying on the glass. So the light falls off very quickly. It falls off into blackness. So I do some touch up to darken the background a little bit afterwards. But again, the lid is open and it's not in a dark room.
Okay, thank you. One other question came up, and that is the depth that you have on the images on the scanner look very deep. Question was, how come they're not squished down?
Actually, you have to be somewhat careful with your subject matter because the focus starts to fall off probably after maybe 3/4 of an inch or something like that. So you can't really scan objects that are real tall and expect to get depth up high. Flat objects work best, like flat flowers, that kind of thing. But your subject doesn't get squished because I don't put the lid down on the scanner. The lid stays up. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. Okay, great. There was another one, but we'll hold that one until the end if we can.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's continue. So I'm going to go into a little bit more history of still lifes. Talk a little bit about symbolism. Because from flowers to seashells, still life paintings tend to be full of disguised symbolism and can actually reveal a hidden world of much deeper meaning. So, you might look at this and think it's a celebration of the pleasures in life, beautiful flowers, the bounty of fruit. But on closer look, you'll often see wilting or dying flowers, maybe an insect or two. There's a wasp right there on those grapes. And I must admit, I had always wondered why rotting fruit would be there. Here you see fruit once luscious and beautiful, but now spoiled and inedible. Well, in researching this, I found out that it's designed to recall Christian teachings on the brevity of life and the need to focus on lasting spiritual matters rather than fleeting earthly pleasures. So these paintings were called vanitas still lifes. And vanitas means emptiness, futility, worthlessness. And vanitas paintings often depicted symbols of mortal wealth, accomplishment, luxurious pleasure, items such as musical instruments or books, tobacco pipes or porcelain. And they were often featured alongside maybe a timepiece or skulls, because none of it mattered. The not so subtle message is, remember, you're going to die and you can't take all this stuff with you. And in 1649, an event occurred that actually introduced a whole new item in many still lifes. I found this fascinating. So King Charles I in England, he believed in the divine right of kings. He believed that he had been chosen by God to lead and that he was above the law. Well, his subjects and English Parliament, they didn't quite see it that way. And despite years of skirmishes over the matter, Charles, he could not get this idea out of his head. So the solution by the people was, well, you can see what their solution was. In 1649, he became the first king of England to be tried and executed by his subjects. And so starting in 1649, crowns started showing up in vanitas paintings in significant numbers, and everyone knew what that meant. Your earthly power and prestige, nothing when you're dead. So, okay, after doing research on the meanings of traditional still lifes, I, of course, had to create some of my own. Well, I don't have a human skull, so a deer skull will have to do, that I found in the woods. So the skull is that reminder that earthly pleasures are fleeting, death is inevitable. The egg brings hope and purity. An egg is a symbol of fertility and the circle of life. That old car jack, that kind of represents the frustration of me trying to get the grease that was on it off my hands and my clothes. And I just want to mention a wonderful image with a very similar subject that I saw on your website of an egg and a wrench called Inner Strength by David Marchetto. Really fantastic still life. Books and musical instruments, they were considered luxury items, often included in still life paintings to show off the wealth of or talent of a patron. But then there were lamps or candles that represented that passage of time. More symbols, gold, silver, jewels, reflect a patron's collection of expensive objects. And in a vanitas still life painting, items of luxury, they actually heighten the tension between the materialism and mortality. So a clock or a watch represents the passing of time. Our time on earth is limited. And there's a butterfly. So as a group, insects tend to symbolize greed or decay, but butterflies can represent transformation, and in Christianity, resurrection. Shells, in addition to being associated with femininity, seashells can symbolize fertility, birth, and good fortune. So, okay, I have to do it. I'm always up for a challenge. So I'm going to build my own ultimate still life and include all these symbols. Well, it began with just some simple pleasures of life, knowledge, and music. And books were once rare, and only wealthy people could afford them. Add a beautiful bouquet of flowers in full bloom. It signifies life, faith, growth, and power. And let's show off some more wealth and include some pearls, symbols of purity and perfection. And right above those pearls, We're going to enrich our family and future with seashells for fertility, birth, and good fortune. Let's bring in some grapes to symbolize pleasure and lust associated with Bacchus, the Roman god of wine. And you know, that green book on the left, that looks a little bit barren. Along comes Eve with an apple and has to ruin it all. So an apple can signify love, knowledge, wisdom, or joy. But in religious works, it usually means temptation and original sin. Oh, this went too fast. So now to be reminded, where's that skull? Okay, now to be reminded of the futility of materialism, the skull, a striking reminder of the certainty of death. But alas, some hope. A lit candle symbolizes light, truth, and knowledge. Light in the darkness, faith in the other. And let's add another symbol of hope right on that blue vase. Here comes that little butterfly. And butterflies represent transformation, and in Christianity, resurrection. But do you know about the butterfly effect? Just a small flapping of its wings can cause significant changes. This little butterfly flapped, and he's going to blow that candle right out. And an extinguished candle symbolizes loss and death. So these symbols of mortality and earthly remains sometimes are depicted with the accompanying phrase, omnia mors equat, which is Latin for death makes all equal. So this is my interpretation of a still life that includes lots of symbolism. And I like it, but actually it's a little bit too busy for me. And I don't know, I'm bothered by that green flower there. So I decided just to crop it down. I removed some of the distracting elements and I changed the color of the flower. I think it harmonizes a bit more with the grapes over here. And I think this is a much stronger composition. And I just want to again mention your member, David Marchetto, who apparently does a lot of still lifes. And on your website, I saw another one that he did that also has it all. It's called Vanitas with Fruit and Musical Instruments. So a shout out to David for that. It was a wonderful still life. Okay, moving on to lighting. Lighting is so important. It can have a tremendous impact on your images. Here's a simple still life found at the Mercer Museum. This is in Bucks County. But the lighting is what makes this come alive. Warm light from inside the building and cool light from the window. It provides definition of the subject and a pleasing color palette of warm golds and cool blues. And here's that old greasy car jack again. So the image on the left is just the available light in my kitchen. The image on the right is the exact same. Nothing has been moved. I just placed a black background behind it. I took some colored cellophane and wrapped it around 2 flashlights and lit it from both sides. Oh, cute little gummy bears. No, I don't want to run into them in a dark alley. Have you ever seen such scary gummy bears? And oh, you thought I was done with the forks? Well, lighting can take an ordinary object and give it personality. Creative lighting, it allows the photographer the ability to just turn everyday objects into beautiful photographs. So here's a more traditional still life. I collected a variety of vases, but I kept to a color scheme of greens and blues. Found this interesting martini glass at Goodwill, but the lighting is not really doing anything for this image. When I creatively control the light, it adds depth and drama. And I added a little fish in that martini glass just for fun. Now here, I like the subtle, gentle light in this image. This is just natural light. But by changing the lighting, the mood and the look of the image is completely different. And you may like the first one better or this one, it doesn't matter. I like them both. And just a side note on this one, I have a little compositional boo-boo in this image. Okay, you see this stem right there? It merges or touches this other pair. And it's not a big deal, but had I noticed that in advance, I would have just tilted this pear slightly to give it a little bit of breathing room there, similar to what you see between these other pears. Okay, back to lighting. You can even creatively control sunlight in your images. I took this at an area cemetery and I just lined up an opening in the cross so that the sun shone through and created this beautiful sunburst. Can I add some drama by changing the lighting? This lighting again is quite flat. Here, I've added some rim light to give the edges some definition, and I put a candle inside the jack-o'-lantern. Now that's a Halloween pumpkin. And okay, so this is a still life I am particularly proud of. I created it at a workshop by the master of painting with light, Harold Ross. I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with his work. I've watched Harold Ross demonstrate, and some of the images I've already shown were based somewhat on his method of light painting, but not to this level. This is what I wanted to learn. I mean, look at the sculptural feel to this image. The light is pure magic. You can feel the coarseness of the leather strap, the smoothness of the fabric. So this was a pretty big undertaking, and it's an investment of money and 3 days to learn this, which is complicated. But Harold is an excellent teacher, and I'm very glad that I did this. I certainly have a much better understanding of light and composition. And I'm going to zoom in on the bottom of this image. That's because I just want to point out what the magic of light can do. This leather strap down here, it appears to have sort of a nice curve to it. In reality, it's flat. The curve here is simulated by adding light and a little bit of shadow right here. Isn't that cool?
Wow.
So I'll give a quick overview of the process, the Cliff Notes version anyway. So there really is a lot more to it, but you'll get the idea. So I set up a still life of vegetables from our community garden. This is just a single light source to get everything positioned in a pleasing composition. It's rather flat, boring light. And I use a small flashlight, curved PVC pipe taped to it, and that bends the light and somewhat softens it. And then I turn out all the lights and I begin light painting. So I'm lighting one area of the still life at a time. I'm moving around the subject. I'm painting small areas with a flashlight, sort of moving the flashlight around a bit. The top, the sides, these are all separate images. And then all the images are pulled into Photoshop in layers and blended together. Here's the finished light painting version. So yes, this is complicated, but consider the difference. Regular one source light from this to this. So I'll share a few more images done this way. Okay, we're getting to your eggs.
Okay.
Here I was inspired by an image I saw online, and it was not easy getting this stack of eggshells to stand up. I actually put a little blob of rubber cement right here on the bottom to make them stand up. And I like this shot, but the glue didn't hold for long. They toppled over, and this was a happy accident, as I liked this image even more. Light painting creates a dramatic, very sculptural feel. So there's your busted egg image.
Okay.
More onions with burlap. This technique really enhances textures. And working in the newspaper industry, I had access to old wooden letters and numbers. And a very traditional setup. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, we are starting to collect quite an assortment of junk to photograph that we've picked up at garage sales and thrift stores. There's that old board again. And we found these clock gears at an antique market, and I knew I had to bring it home to light paint. And this is just a bunch of old rusty tools and some more of the antique printer letters. So you can tell that I really enjoy the magic of light painting. A close-up of just some of the wrenches. And because the light is directional coming from the side, it enhances those textures. And this is the largest subject I have ever light painted. I just shot this on New Year's Day this year. This is an antique Ben Franklin press that was actually used to print the first edition of one of the newspapers I worked for called The Public Spirit. The first edition of this newspaper was printed on this press in 1873. So again, I've light painted this, and this is probably about 20 different images of painting one area at a time. So where does inspiration come from? Well, presentations and workshops. I was very much inspired by amazing photographers like Harold Ross and many, many others. I've been inspired by many of my fellow camera club members and by looking at images from other camera clubs like yours. Inspiration comes from my research, but many times it just kind of pops into my head. So Jim has a small collection of old cameras, and I wanted to create an image that would acknowledge their importance to us as photographers. So this was done on black plexiglass. In this case, I wanted to memorialize an old friend, RIP to my Canon 40D. It lived a long and active life. It had an expected shutter life of, I think, about 100,000 cycles. I must have doubled that. Inspiration comes from Camera Club challenges. The Chester County Camera Club has an annual summer challenge. They'll give out a list of topics to photograph during the summer months when we don't meet. And there will be a theme, like this one a few years back. The theme was From Where I Stand. Your feet had to be in every image. So it's sort of like a scavenger hunt of topics to photograph. This one had to be with a book. So it really makes you think and forces you to be creative. Another one from the Where I Stand series. This one, the assignment was in the bathroom. Another summer challenge. Here the theme was adjectives and the assignment was messy. So I'm not sure this qualifies as a still life, but it's my presentation, so I say it does. And I got my dog Shadow to sit still, and that was quite an accomplishment. So here's how I did this one. Set up a tablecloth on a picnic table outside and hung a backdrop from the swing set behind it. This took a couple of assistants. That's my husband, Jim, and our daughter, Alex. And a lot of flour, a lot of tries to get Shadow to sit still with a spoon in her mouth without much success. And then Jim solved the problem. He put a little bit of peanut butter right there on that spoon, and that did the trick. And then I just asked Jim to toss some flour around because I knew that I would add it to the final image. Then I just removed Jim's hand and added the flying flour. Here's the finished image. Shadow the chef being a bit messy. And here she is again. This was to illustrate the word elegant. And oh, there are those Goodwill martini glasses again. This time they're filled with doggy biscuits. So inspiration comes from local day trips. This was at Hopewell Furnace National Park, not too far from you. Because inside old historical places, there's always some treats to photograph. Another one from Hopewell. Here I liked the textures of the rusty bucket and the old brick wall. And a few from Valley Forge National Park. That's not too far from where I live, so I go there a lot. And we tend to think of places like Valley Forge for the beautiful landscapes and structures, found still lifes throughout. The bluebells in spring and many other flowering trees and plants. So this thistle on the right was in a field. It was just cluttered with vegetation. And I needed to separate it from its background. So I was wearing a black jacket and I was with photo buddy and I said, Wayne, do me a favor. I took off my jacket. I said, just hold my jacket up behind this thistle. And that provided the separation that I needed. Autumn in Valley Forge. I like to just sit on the ground, and that's when I discover little gems like these. I often wear rain pants so I can just like lay down in wet grass. Autumn leaves reflected in a broken glass of an old barn window. And in Valley Forge, there's a special solitude in winter. And a minimalist approach can be quite beautiful. And I love to look for patterns and textures in ice nature provides endless that are just incredible works of art. Okay, now I'm no longer in Valley Forge. This is just some frost on a drafty window in my home. And the crystals on a frozen soap bubble. I don't know if any of you have tried this. This is really hard to do. It has to be really cold, like under 18 degrees, and no wind, or your bubbles will pop before you. Or dip a cookie cutter into bubble goo. And you have to get out very early to catch the rising sun behind it. But there you see those crystal formations. And I said that inspiration sometimes just comes to me. I actually think my passion for photography has a lot to do with that, as I'm just so much more aware of beauty in unusual places. So last winter, icicles formed overnight down outside of our sunroom, and I looked at them, and then I looked closer. And then I grabbed the macro lens and saw this. And the closer I got, the more fascinated I was with the patterns inside those icicles. And I was able to frame this one in front of an out of focus water droplet behind it. So when the ice comes this year, don't swear at it, photograph it. And here are a few more found still lifes, interesting patterns in the gears of old farm equipment, or a created still life inside of a wooden canoe. My husband, Jim, builds and restores these beautiful old canoes, and he enjoys his beer. There's a clock at that Mercer Museum in Bucks County. And these, of course, are not still lifes, but these are shots that we would normally think of taking at the World War II reenactment. You have probably been to this in Reading. It's a fantastic photo opportunity, especially for those of you like me who are a bit intimidated to ask permission to take a photo. At reenactments, you don't need to ask permission. The participants just love having their picture taken. But look for the still life opportunities because they're everywhere. I like inside this typewriter here, the Morning Report. And we're lucky to live near Longwood Gardens, one of the largest gardens in the world. And this is from the annual Orchid Extravaganza. And I enjoy looking for unique compositions. I like to zoom in close to subjects. These are both from the Tulip Festival at Longwood. And okay, so every year we see images pop up on social media of the annual show of the Himalayan blue poppies at Longwood Gardens. They only last a few weeks. And I had always avoided going there to shoot it because I had heard that there were hordes of photographers that come from all over trying to shoot the same thing, the Himalayan blue poppies, but I finally went. And I was so pleased that I had these beauties all to myself. And I liked the images. So I posted some of them on Facebook and I said, I can finally cross this one off my photo bucket list. Well, I immediately started getting comments. Nice pictures, Betsy, but these are not the Himalayan blue poppies. There's some kind of anemone. Oops, I was in the wrong room. So, oh well, I went back a few days later and found the real Himalayan blue poppies. And a hint, if you go a day or two after Longwood says the exhibit is over, they may still be there, but the hordes of photographers are not. So, but after all the hoopla about the Himalayan blue poppies, I think I like the purple anemones better anyway. And not sure a live fly counts as a still life, but she did stay still for me. Inspiration comes from photo tours and workshops. This is from an airplane and truck graveyard in South Jersey, a workshop led by a great photographer, Richard Lewis. And it's just a cool place with ruins of fuselage of airplanes on rusted old trucks. It's just really cool. Jim and I had a lot of fun there. What a cool place to photograph. But of course, I'm just sharing this. So remember, we talked about still lifes are found or created or something in between. Well, that's my glove carefully placed into where else? The glove compartment. And there's just a cornucopia of still lifes there, especially if you're into celebrating the beauty of rust and decay. And we went in November when the autumn leaves, I think, presented a natural harmony to the grit of twisted metal and trust. So, and sometimes I get an idea, and it's fun just trying to figure out how to create the image that's in my imagination. So I love the crocuses and snowdrops, but they were drooping over in my yard, and they were just surrounded by leaves and debris. And I thought, well, how can I get them to stand up and have a background that will emphasize their beautiful lines and form? Thumbtacks and a pool noodle, problem solved. So take some ordinary objects and try to photograph them in a different way. With some imagination, you can create a toolbox skyline or a broccoli and sunflower sunrise. Try some dramatic lighting, add a subtle reflection. For this one, I placed a bright flashlight inside the basket to give the appearance of daylight pouring through the basket. And whenever possible, look for character, something that can add emotion or a connection. So look at the protective embrace in this image. It's a very simple subject and a simple color palette, but I feel a human connection in this image. Here, I carefully arranged some dandelions to form a family group, a family in a sort of a group hug. I found this oak leaf clinging to a fern, looking as if it is hanging on for dear life. Or an unusual juxtaposition. I found this autumn leaf nestled inside a metal cover, only a still life until a truck drives by and sweeps it up with its exhaust. And sometimes you can find a bit of humor. I think this sunflower has a secret. I think this one's giving an obscene gesture. Pointers. Pleasing composition. Choose your perspective, vary your angle, look up, down, left, right. Find a suitable background or hang up a blanket behind your subject. Ask a friend to hold a jacket up. Control your lighting. Slow down and take your time and pay attention to detail. Make minor adjustments again and again. Move that pear ever so slightly. And we haven't talked about post-processing creativity, but that can add a lot to your images. Most of these images I have shown you have had some sort of touch-up or enhancement done either in Lightroom or Photoshop. And just a footnote, these three images all have something in common, something quite unintentional. So you can see it pretty clearly here in this broken ornament. That's my ceiling fan. And here it is in this marble ceiling fan. And it's pretty subtle in these eggs, but there it is. There's that ceiling fan. And what's interesting is when I took all of these images, I didn't even know there. It wasn't until I got back and looked at them on the computer. I went, oh, there's my ceiling fan. And it doesn't really bother me that much. But again, it just shows how you really need to take your time to observe. So anyway, in the quest for more and more items to photograph, we have collected slinkies and a meat grinder, a greasy car jack, a mannequin head, a deer skull, old tools and clock gears and thingamajigs and birds' nests and dead bugs and even a wooden snake. So while everyone else is tidying up with Marie Kondo and donating their junk to thrift stores, I'm out at garage sales and Goodwill shops buying all their trash. Thanks, Anita. Does anyone want to know why we no longer invite guests to the Wilson house? So I swear, Jim's canoes are still in there somewhere. So it all started with a request from Anita. And they say, it's not the destination, it's the journey. My destination is this presentation to all of you. And my journey has been priceless. And for that, I say, thank you, Anita. And to all of you, I say, Thank you. So, and again, you'll get the PDF of sort of the condensed version of this presentation that Joe will share. And it does include many of the images, not all of them, but it has my contact info on there, along with a link to my website that has maybe some more still lifes. And actually on my website, I've got a page about the scanography if you want to learn a little bit more about that. And I also have links to the 3 photographers that I mentioned. Richard Lewis, who runs the workshop in the airplane graveyard, Mike Moats, that's the macro photographer, and Harold Ross, the master of light painting. So you can learn more about them as well. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and ask Joe or Dennis if there are any questions or comments. Okay, stop share. There we go.
Those photographs were stunning, absolutely stunning.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, Joe, you're muted, Joe.
Okay. One of the questions we had was, what are the keys to your image processing?
Well, it varies. It depends on what it is I'm trying to achieve. With the still lifes, maybe a generalization is that I'm typically looking for a lot of detail. So I'll use, an aperture to get maximum depth of field. And then I'll use topaz detail is one of my favorites. There are many ways to enhance detail, but I like topaz detail because you can pick just little details, medium details, or big details. And I tend to enhance more of the tiny details. So, I might do some color correction. I'll definitely do some cleanup if there's items, I call them edge boogers, maybe something in the way, a dust spot or whatever, I'll do cleanup, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Another question came in. The backgrounds you're using, are there any stuff you find like burlap or what?
Yes, I actually have a few photo backdrops that are made like for portraits, like a gray backdrop that has sort of modeled colorizations on it. And I'll use that sometimes. Sometimes, yeah, I'll just hang a black blanket behind something. Some of the ones, I said the Harold Ross technique is pretty complicated. Some of those actually have sort of a textured background. That was done in front of a black background, and a textured background was added in post-processing. Again, that gets kind of complex. But for still life, sometimes I'll drape fabric behind it. Sometimes I'll put a big board behind it to make it look rustic. So it varies.
Okay. Anybody have a question? Just unmute yourself and ask Betsy.
I can start out with one, Joe. Betsy, lighting reflective surfaces like glass and metal, as you do frequently, is quite challenging. What are your keys to success there?
Oh boy, I really find that very challenging. One of the things I learned from Harold Ross again is diffusing the light. So what I'll do is I'll take a diffuser, the big white thing you take out with you to diffuse sunlight outside. Maybe you're shooting flowers or something, and that bright sunlight is creating shadows. So I'll take that diffuser. Now is where I need usually another person because I'm shining a flashlight through that diffuser, but that will typically diffuse the light. Now, actually, for my birthday, I just got a special light that Harold Ross sells that it's a flashlight that projects sort of through this curved wand. And the wand, it's covered 3/4 of the way around so that I can wave this wand. And that's got kind of a muted light as well, a softer light. And I just got it. I haven't tried it yet. Harold tells me that that's really good for doing reflective objects like vases or glassware.
When you're not doing light painting, do you use soft boxes?
Yes, actually, some of the images that I showed you tonight were done in a soft box. So I do have one of those. They're not real expensive. I think it's like 45 bucks on B&H or something, but it's just a soft box that has like white, sort of see-through white sides and a top on it. So the object inside kind of has light bouncing around it. It actually comes with 2 lights that I can point from different directions if I want. And you can
Oh,
also
a light tent.
yeah, like a light. It's a box actually. It's a cube. So
Okay.
you put your subject inside this cube, and it comes with black sides and blue sides. So you could even do it. It's made for product photography, I think.
Mhm.
But some of the still lifes that you saw with some of the fruit and the silverware with the lemons in it, that was done in one of those boxes.
Okay, thank you.
Betsy, you mentioned a black plexiglass.
Mhm.
Is it truly black?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
It's black plexiglass, but it's very shiny. So
Okay.
it's almost like looks like a black mirror almost.
Okay.
And I just got that from Amazon.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Anybody else have a question for Betsy?
Yes,
I don't
this
have
is Terry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, somebody.
Terry, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you. When you were doing your scanning, how do you keep your photos so sharp? I've tried it and I can't seem to get the sharpness.
Well, I don't know why you're not getting the sharpness, because again, I don't have an expensive scanner, but go into your settings and see what your resolution is. I scan at a very high resolution. I mean, you can go up to like 2400 DPI, and I don't do it that high because it just takes up so much memory in the computer. I think I typically scan at about 800 DPI, which is still, that's a lot of detail. And you can enlarge tiny things and get incredible detail. Like I showed you that, just a piece of an autumn leaf, and you could see every little vein in there. So, maybe there's something wrong with your scanner. I don't know, but you should be able to get good detail.
It's the same scanner you're using. You're using a Canon?
Canon Canoscan, I think it's an 8600
Yes.
is the model.
Thank you. That's my problem. I wasn't using high enough resolution. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Another question for Betsy. Any?
Betsy? Yeah, Betsy.
Mhm.
I've got a question. Some of your pictures seem to be texturized. Are those textures of your own making, or do you get textures and then make a layer of them and then erase part of the texture, or what?
Both. I certainly have created my own textures, but I do have topaz texture, and sometimes I'll use some of those textures that come with topaz texture. It's in the topaz bundle, I guess. And then, yes, I'll always add the texture as a separate layer in Photoshop, so I can control the blending mode, and I can control where the texture is applied on the image. Most of these still lifes really did not have a texture on top of them. Maybe a few of them did, but not many. But I do use textures a lot. And again, I like to be able to sort of brush off the textures, brush it away from my main subject, and maybe like if it's a flower, let it blend into that background.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Betsy?
Hi, Betsy. This is Dave Marchetto. You're very kind.
There you are.
You're very kind. The only thing I have in common with you is I can barely spell still life. That's all.
You are so creative, and it was so funny when I was looking on the website and I saw that wrench and the egg. I said, "Holy crap, that's so similar to my car jack, the egg." So
really, your presentation is a true inspiration to us.
Oh, thank you.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. Betsy, I have to ask, from a technical standpoint, can you tell me somewhat how you use Lightroom versus Photoshop versus topaz or anything? I mean, or
Sure.
do you get 90% of it out of your camera? I'm just amazed at the quality and type of images you have here.
Yeah, the answer as usual is it depends. When I did those light painting images,
Mhm.
that's a lot of Photoshop because that still life that I took you through. I painted the tomatoes and then the lettuce
Mhm.
all spilling out of a basket. That was probably about I don't know, 16 to 20 different images. So they're all brought in layers in Photoshop. So that's a lot of Photoshop in there. And then I'll blend them and
Mhm.
maybe brighten some areas. Most of the images, my process typically is I'll just start in Lightroom. If I can do it in Lightroom, I'll do it in Lightroom. And in
Wow.
fact,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, the texture slider that Lightroom added, I guess about a year ago or so, I use that a
Mhm.
lot. I think that really enhances your detail a lot. And of course, now that you can do those cool selections in Lightroom, that's kind of a game changer too. If you want to separate your subject from a background, you can select subject and Lightroom gets it right a lot of the times. And then maybe blur, take some of the sharpness down from your background, or
Sure.
take the brightness of your background down. So I'll do a lot of that. But typically I'll try to do as much as I can in Lightroom. For spot removal and things like that, I almost always use Photoshop because I find Photoshop much easier for me to use anyway than Lightroom for fixing major areas and things like that.
That's really remarkable work, Betsy, and
Thank
can't
you.
thank you enough for spending time with us.
Thank you.
Betsy,
Thank
I
you.
was going to mention a macro photographer that I admire, but I see you already have his book, Don Komarechka.
Oh, yes.
In the
Yep.
upper right-hand corner.
Oh,
there.
yeah. Yep. You're right. I do. And so when I talked about the soap bubble,
Yes.
Dom Komarechka was my
I think-
inspiration.
Next you'll be doing snowflakes too.
I finally got a few snowflakes this winter, not anywhere near as good as Don Komarechka, but I got a few. And there was an image at the very beginning I showed also. It was of little tiny water droplets in a garden, and you could see sort of the flower coming through it. And that was thanks to Don Komarechka. So, with his focus stacking, he does a lot of handheld focus stacking. And that's
Right.
the technique that I did there. Yeah, I love his work. He's a fun guy.
Do
A
you use
little,
any
little too technical for me, but
Oh, very, yeah. Do you use any specialized macro equipment?
no, I have a Tamron 100mm macro lens that I use. And I have extension tubes and I keep trying them and I get frustrated because it's so hard to get the focus right.
Yeah, I invested in the Canon MPE 65mm about a year ago.
Wow.
It's incredible, but you've got to be careful with your technique.
Wow. That sounds cool.
Yeah, your images are beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I love the way you light them. Well, and your creative compositions. I mean, that's where I struggle. And then you light them beautifully and then they're processed well. So they, just gorgeous product.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Betsy, looking at the chat, we have such wonderful compliments on your session. Absolutely enjoyed your wonderful presentation. Truly inspiring. Thank you. Very nice. And they go on and on. Just everybody loved your presentation tonight.
Oh, thank you. If you could, I don't know if you can share those comments with me, but I'd love to be able to see them if you can. That would be great.
We will gladly do that. Yes. So any final questions for Betsy?
No, just one comment. I agree that those are just marvelous. It was a marvelous presentation. I'm going to force my wife to watch it with me tomorrow, to watch the repeat.
I hope
I mean,
she's not bored. And as you collect a lot of stuff and you want to tell her that's the reason why.
No, but it gives me a good reason to start collecting. She tends to throw things away.
Well, then she'll enjoy this presentation. There's a reason she saved all that stuff. Now it's your job to go photograph it.
Right. I'll start tomorrow.
So if anybody would like leave a compliment or a comment rather in the chat room, we'll make sure that that Betsy gets those if you want to do that. And if you could unmute yourself, we'd like to have a big round of applause for Betsy this evening.
Ah,
If you
that's
could do that.
great.
All right.
Super.
Wonderful
super.
program.
Thank
Thank
you.
Wonderful, wonderful program, Betsy.
Awesome.
Absolutely. The folks that we talked to before we were investigating, they all said we have to watch this presentation, and they were absolutely right. It was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So much.
I enjoy it. I really enjoy it. You've got a great group there.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next week is going to be before and after. We and the directions for that will be coming out tomorrow, and Mark Urbano will be handling that session next week.
Get it
Again,
in as soon as possible. You're gonna have to listen to me the whole hour.
okay, thank you very much, Dennis. I think we can sign off.
I think we can. Yeah. Betsy, thank you again. That was
Thank you.
terrific. And thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for joining
you.
us this evening. I'll get
Thank
that follow-up email out tomorrow morning, and hope to see you Friday night at the Mechanicsburg Arts Center for our opening reception for the print exhibit. Okay. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Right.
Thanks so much, Betsy.
Thanks.
Dennis, leave the Zoom session open for a bit because people are putting in some additional comments.
Will do. Is there a way to download the chat comments?
I don't know. I'm going to do a screen snaps on them. So I
Okay.
don't know if I can do that. So I'm going to do that right this minute.
Save chat. Yeah. At the
Okay.
where it says everyone, there are
Yes.
3 little dots to the right.
Okay.
And you can do that. I just did it. You might want to do it too.
Okay. I
Sure.
got
Co-
chat.
Co-host.
I
Yeah,
don't
clear down
see
at the
the
bottom and.
I
and
don't
just-
see you're administrator and I'm not administrator. So that's probably why I can't see the 3 dots, the ellipse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't see that.
where it says type message here,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see it.
just to the
Yeah.
right.
Oh.
Yeah,
Little
go to the
smiley
bottom.
face there.
Chat. I got it. Save chat. Now, where did it save it to?
Oh, somewhere on your computer, you'll find it later.
All right. Okay, great. Wonderful. Yeah, you'll love these, Betsy. These are
Oh,
great.
good. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Sure thing. Thank you much. Take care.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Dennis, I gotta find out where those were saved.
Yeah,
Save
yeah, it's
chat.
probably in your downloads. Oh, it might be in the Zoom folder.
I think it's gonna be in the Zoom folder,
Yeah.
probably on the
Yeah.
recording. I bet you it will be. So you can get those out of there tomorrow. That was
Okay.
excellent. Oh my
Awesome.
gosh.
Thank you so much.
You
I'll
did.
sign off. You guys can keep
Yeah.
chatting if you want. Okay.
Betsy, how often have you done that presentation?
I've probably done that one about 10 times now.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
Okay. But
And,
mostly camera clubs in the area?
yeah, well, again, it really did start with Anita at my own camera club, Chester County Camera Club. And it was
Right.
a shorter presentation when I first did it. And I've been building on it. And actually the whole section where I did the symbolism and I built my still life kind of piece by piece, that was brand new for you. I have not done that. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Joe, if you had seen that other video from the one I did, was it Burke's, I think?
In Birch,
That
yes.
was- So that's, I usually I try to change it up for each club. I do try to, if there's a way to make it pertain just to your club in any way, I try to do that.
Well, I
So
thought it
it's
was
always
great.
more.
Thought it was great that you took the time to look at the website, and then you mentioned a couple of our club members. I'm sure they were tickled pink. That was very
Well,
nice.
Yeah, I always enjoy looking at other camera club websites and people's work. Camera clubs are just great. I love them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Joe and I have been having a great time, keeping this thing going and arranging all the activities. Yeah, I did a presentation last week for the group called What Do You See? And it's about seeing versus perception. And I tied in, it was based on the principles of Gestalt theory. But Joe warned me, for
Don't
goodness sake,
use
don't call
Gestalt.
it the Gestalt theory. No one will show up for the meeting. So I'm looking to do it for a couple other camera clubs now, and somehow you talk about word of mouth. couple of months ago, I got an email from a guy at Redlands Camera Club in California. He says, would you do a presentation for? I said, how did you hear about me? I don't even advertise.
Wow. And so you weren't on a Camera Club Hub?
No, and I'm not yet, but I'm thinking about maybe, advertising there. So we'll see.
Well, I'll have to check that out.
But,
And is there a
I'm,
place I can see the recording of your program?
yeah, there is on our YouTube channel. I can send you a link.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, we started a couple of months ago. We saved the Zoom recordings and then I upload them to, I need to stop this recording. Let me do that right now. We don't need all this.